Thank you so much for joining us for our next featured session at New Orleans Entrepreneur Week. We are so excited to be in the 9th year of celebrating entrepreneurship and innovative thinking in the city of New Orleans. Our next speaker is Lisa Atia, creative brand strategist at Blavity. Blavity is a tech company for forward-thinking Black millennials pushing the boundaries of culture and the status quo. As Blavity's brand strategist, Lisa enjoys the challenge of developing Blavity's overall organizational success while working with a company that focuses on innovative, strategic planning to help create a deep, lasting impact on the Black millennial generation. She's here today to talk about the journey of Blavity and the influence of Black millennials. She's also looking for the best place to get char-grilled oysters in New Orleans, so afterwards you should talk to her. Please join me in welcoming Lisa Atia.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Hey guys, you can hear me okay? I can hear myself. So, wow, you guys are a beautiful crowd. First of all, the people here are amazing. Mom, I might actually have to move to New Orleans, but that's a whole other thing. Okay. My name is Lisa Atia. I am the brand strategist at Blavity. For those of you who don't know, we are a digital media company for Black millennials. So my purpose here today is really to tell you about how we are changing the digital landscape through the lens of Black culture. But before I do that, I kind of want to give you guys a rundown of what this session is going to look like. It's going to be a little different. So I'm going to sit up here just for a little bit, keep it short and sweet, tell you about who we are, what we do at Blavity, and then Sheba and I will actually have a one-on-one where you can learn a little bit more about who I am personally and professionally and why this work is so incredibly important to me. And then we'll just open it up for questions so we can, rap a little bit, find out what's on your minds. Cool? All right. So I'm going to start at the beginning with Blavity. It was 2014, and this was happening. It's not working. There we go. Mike Brown had just been shot, and our CEO and founder, Morgan DeBon, was working at Intuit at the time in Silicon Valley. And she grew up in Missouri, so her city was on fire. So she was looking to CNN and all these other big media outlets to find out what was happening, but nobody was covering it. In essence, the Black community was being told, your stories aren't important enough for us to tell them. And once it was being covered, lies were being told about what had happened and what was happening. And so Blavity was born. Blavity is a space where the Black community, our community, can come together to share our stories from our perspectives. And it was really this mistrust of the media that has allowed us to create a platform that doesn't control the narrative, but opens it up to people who are experiencing real life. And I want to show you guys what it looks like kind of in real life, because sometimes it's easier to show you than to stand up here and talk about it. So I'm going to show you a clip of our tech conference in the Bay Area that we hosted that celebrated Black excellence. And we brought together the industry's thought leaders, CEOs, founders, to really just kind of come together to share ideas and inspiration. And I want you to pay attention to what it looks like when you create a space for a community whose voice has typically been marginalized, that when they actually come together, they don't talk about the lack, but they talk about the richness and celebrate what is that community. So let's take a look.
Welcome to the first ever Afrotech conference presented by Blavity.
So my whole story isn't about me in particular, but it's about becoming more than what society expected me to be. Because that is how the game is played. There are limits that are placed on us, known and unknown. And we tend to become what people expect of us. And I expected greatness for myself, and I expect greatness for every single one of you in this room today. So do not sell yourself short. We're on stage right now, but we're building for you. And then you build for the people who aren't here, and so on and so forth. I became a designer at Nike. I was the first Black design intern. And this was crazy. All the athletes looked like us, but there was no one creating for us. So when I stepped through the door, I was actually representing every single one of you in this room. I fought battles that are just immense. I stood up against giants and told them, you will not put athletes in imagery that make them look like a slave or subjugate them to being less than. You will not have Serena with her ass out. We're not doing that. So I had to stand there and fight against the machine to let them know that, yes, we are athletic, but we're also poetic and creative and beautiful and capable, and you will not strip that from us. And so when I was there, I was not there designing shoes. I was there designing opportunities because it was my dream to make sure when I left that there was more of me. I had to productize myself. I had to figure out that I wanted to take the door not only off the hinge, but I wanted to crack the roof open, tear the foundation, and rebuild a structure that was inclusive of us, not just inclusive of what they take from us.
So then what we're really thinking about here then is like, how do we take the things that we normally consider as our obstacles, particularly as people of color, particularly as anyone who doesn't feel like they fit at the table, don't feel like they fit in this world, how do we take those experiences and realize that that's actually the future? Like most of the world looks like me, so why am I afraid to start a company and build shit for the people who look like me? Right? Like, come on, like, you know what? That's what doesn't make sense. Why are we so afraid to engage? So I said, okay, how do I then double down? Right? I had an option, and we're gonna raise this round. I was like, we can either sort of code switch, try to play down the things that make us different, and just do the things that make people more comfortable, or we can double down on the things that make us us, right? And let the people who are attracted to that come.
It was magic. Now, obviously, I'm a little biased, but if you guys go online, take a look at some of the articles that were written about it, or even if you go to Twitter and take a look at the hashtag AfroTech16, you'll be able to see just kind of the energy that people were talking about and so excited about in terms of being there. Now, it's really this idea of bringing the community together that Blavity was founded on. It's what we call Black Gravity, which is coincidentally what Blavity stands for. So, quick background, Morgan and her 3 co-founders went to college together at WashU, and there was a pretty strong Black community there. And in the cafeteria, there was this one small round table that had about 7 or 8 seats. And what started out as maybe a small group ended up being like 20 or 30 people that would just sit for hours talking about politics or the latest album that came out. And it's really this idea of bringing together the community both digitally and in person at our conferences that we really seek to recreate. We also look to do that for the different subgroups within the Black Millennial community. So in Chicago, this June, we're gonna have our Women's Entrepreneur Conference called Empower Her, shameless plug, yes. We will be back here at Essence Fest to be a part of that cultural moment. And then we also create happy hours all over the country so that the community can just come together and vibe and just celebrate one another. So at this point, I'm probably sure you guys are thinking, that's great, it's wonderful, you just took me to church, but you know, what do you guys actually do? How do you make money? Well, I'm glad you asked. So we work with brands that are looking to access the influence of Black culture because we know that Black culture creates mainstream culture. And we do this by creating content, native content, so it's videos, web series, editorial series, social campaigns. And we help our partners translate the value of their products or services to the Black community because traditionally the Black community has been exploited into buying things that they really don't need. And so we see it as our responsibility to be very particular in terms of the brands that we work with to ensure that they want to have a genuine connection with the community. So I want to show you another video of what this actually looks like, what a campaign looks like. For context, we were helping launch a dating app out of Atlanta with the focus being general brand awareness with a focus on Black millennial women. We created a 360-degree campaign. We had like an editorial series about some cool out-of-the-box ideas of where to go on a first date in Atlanta. We also created geo-targeted messaging display ads. And then my favorite part of the campaign was this video that we did. And the challenge really was, how do we satisfy client objectives, because we are a business, But then how do you create a piece of content that's relatable, that sparks conversation, but doesn't reinforce negative stereotypes? So what we came up with was a 2-minute silent video, never been done before, with tweet overlays that answers the question, what if Black Twitter went on your first date? So let's take a look. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I kind of like that one though.
Can we have that?
Yeah.
Yeah, please. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, it's so
it.
cute.
Right. There
Thank
you go.
you.
I'm glad you like it. Hey, crazy idea, but would you like to maybe see me again?
Hell nah. I'm a pass. You cute and all,
Okay. I totally get it. I get it.
No, I'm just playing. I love to.
Really?
Yeah.
That's great. I didn't.
I know, give it up. Our team was incredible. That was super cute, right? That was a 3-week campaign, and that video alone garnered over 6.6 million organic impressions. Now I want to talk about some of the strategies that went into being purposeful in terms of creating an engaging, successful piece of content. So first, we know our audience. We know that they want to have real, meaningful conversations about real-life moments. So awkward first date, check. We know how to use social media. We know that the Black community goes to social media to feel empowered, connected, and to have conversations with one another. And it's really why we've been able to be so successful as a brand, because we have created engagement as part of our metrics of success, which is why we've been able to, in less than 3 years, have over 1 million unique visitors to our site every month and have over 125,000 people read our daily newsletter. We also build messaging for the platform. So we know that most people watch Facebook at work on silent, no judgment, but that instead of having like the subtext at the bottom and being super boring, we wanted to find a creative way to also have some kind of in-culture commentary, which is really where the tweets came in. We also worked with actors who were social influencers and had large engaged audiences already built in. And our writer and director was from the Black Twitter sphere to ensure that the messaging landed with the audience. Lastly, and most importantly though, we're authentic. And I want to dive just a little deeper into what authenticity means, because it's become such a buzzword in the industry, but what does it really mean for a brand to be an organic, authentic part of the conversation? Well, in this instance, I'm not selling you a dating app. I'm not telling you to go download it. I'm saying let's have a broader conversation about what does dating look like in the Black community. If we work with a financial company, I'm not going to sell you a credit card. I'm going to create a funny video series about what does it look like to create your first budget, or how to get out of college debt. Because quite honestly, these are the conversations that the Black community has not had access to or been taught. And because we have the platform, because we have that visibility, we are committed to ensuring that we can instigate those conversations no matter how uncomfortable they may be. So before I end, can't believe my talk's already coming to an end. I think it's important to note that as a company, we are absolutely committed to our community and our audience, because we are only as good as the community that we do build. And it is this commitment to creating content that is truly reflective and honest about who we are, both individually and collectively, because we are not a monolith. Thank you.
So let's give Lisa another round of applause. That was incredible. Those videos were so good.
Thank you.
I'm very honored to invite Sheba Turk to the stage. She is an anchor for Eyewitness Morning News and the host of a local entertainment show, The 504. She also writes a lifestyle blog, and she will lead a fireside chat with Lisa.
Hello, everyone. Very excited to be with you all, and I'm a Blavity fan, as I'm sure many of you are. So this is really exciting to get a chance to talk with you. You told me you've been working for Blavity for about a year.
Yep.
So you told us the story behind Blavity. How did you get to working at Blavity?
Honestly, it was kind of meant to be. I truly believe in being in, well, basically I found the job posting online, and it just kind of happened. I went through the process, the rigorous interview process, and everything just kind of worked out.
Yeah, and for those of us who love reading it, I'm sure we want to know what it's like to work there. You were telling me you work in a big office with about 15 people. What's the environment? What's the vibe like on a daily basis?
Well, how honest do you want me to know?
Very honest.
So we, on Fridays and Monday through Thursday, we listen to trap music.
Okay.
You know, it's a really big open environment, so it's actually really nice because we're so small and we're growing so fast, it's easy to just look over the table and be like, hey, did you see that just come in? You didn't answer my email in 5 minutes. Like, what are you doing? Let's talk about it, right? But things work so fast that we have to be on top of it, so it's nice that things are open, and it's just, we get to talk about the things that most people are kind of scared of to talk about in office culture. So we were talking about burning sands, and you know, when the election happened that morning, we basically had our leadership came together, and we had kind of just a team meeting, and they were just like, all right, what do we do? Like, how do we pull together? This is our responsibility as the voice of Black Millennials. You know, we have to be a part of this in some way. And so it's really about being active in the community and listening to what's happening outside, so that internally we're constantly on top of what are those stories we need to write, who are the partners that we need to go after that would be a really good fit for us.
Really cool. And you mentioned when you were speaking about opening up that narrative and this distrust of mainstream media, which so many people have.
Yeah.
How do you not become that, right? As popularity grows and you try to appeal to more people.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's a good question, because I think a lot of people wonder that, but you know, the basis of who we are as a company is we listen to our audience. Most of our content is actually created by our user base, and so it allows us to remain authentic, relevant. So it's one of those things where even as we grow and we grow fast, we're tuned into what's happening, whether from our editorial team who comes from all over the world and have their finger on the pulse of not just pop culture, but news and activism stories and that sort of thing. So we stay relevant because we are our community.
Really cool. And so Blavity was started by a group of entrepreneurs, but you're an entrepreneur yourself. So let's kind of take it back a bit. Your mom is here today, right?
She is.
Where's Mom?
Hello,
Raise
Mom.
Raise
your hand higher,
raise your
Mom.
hand,
Come on.
because she's going to be mad at us in just a second. Give
You
her a
really
round
are,
of applause.
I know.
Because Lisa told me a little story that her mom wanted her to be a doctor back in the day. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so, well, my mom and my dad, so for background, I'm sure you guys are looking at me like, she's really light-skinned. What is she doing here, like, talking about a black company, right? So my dad's from Egypt. My mom is American. And, you know, they, as an interracial couple, you know, my dad came to this country at 19. He didn't know the language. He didn't know the culture. And so him and my mom getting together, they experienced racism, you know, at its core. Mom, I don't know if you want to video this and show Dad. I really don't know if you want to.
She's like, turn the camera off
yeah,
for a second.
Yeah, but, you know, I think from their experiences that they wanted to say, like, Lisa and your sisters, like, you guys need to get a good education. You need to, you know, become a doctor. I mean, look, my dad brought a priest to the house to convince me to go into medicine because that's how much he didn't want me to be an entrepreneur.
Wow.
Because I think for my father, entrepreneurship was hard. Like, it was a hustle. He had to do it, right? Like, he had 5 brothers and sisters that he had to bring over from Egypt and parents. Like, for him, it was survival being an entrepreneur. And for him, it was just a really hard life, you know? And, you know, him and my mom built this life from the ground up. And, I mean, they barely even saw each other. I remember this story that my mom told me when they were first married. They never saw each other except when they would pass by each other, like driving, and they would wave to each other because one was going to night school, the other was coming back from work. And that's how much they wanted to not be defined by what other people were telling them were possible just because of the color of their skin. And so for me, I took that as, oh, you guys are hustlers, like I could do this, right? But, you know, I think we think of entrepreneurship as this really sexy thing, and it's not. Like, it's hard, you know? Like, I started a business that went under because my manufacturer in China went dark on me, you know? And it was the only manufacturer I could afford. I couldn't afford to make jeans out here in the US. But it's things like that that really kind of mold you and create that perseverance in you as an entrepreneur, I think.
And what do you think still made it appeal to you with your parents saying this is not something you want to do? It wasn't necessarily sexy or hot back then like it is now.
Right.
What made you say, no, I want to be an entrepreneur?
I honestly don't even think it was a conscious decision because, you know, I work for a company right now, so people would not consider that being an entrepreneur. But the work that we do is like hardcore entrepreneurial. You know, we are a startup, like for real. I mean, bootstrapping, and it's great because it shows you what really goes into hard work. And it's interesting, like, I grew up a total nerd, right? Like, my parents are like, stay in school, you can't do anything outside of school, your cousins are your friends, you're not allowed to have anything outside of that. Sorry, Mom, I'm sorry. Like, she knows, like, she already knows. But it's that idea of, you know, I saw the other side of it, and I'm like, it's just something that is an innate part of who I am. And having those experiences, like, let's just do it different, you know? Like, being at Blavity, it's one of those things where you grow up being told, like, being a nerd is uncool and all these things, but at the same time, like, I'm around people that are 10 times smarter than me, and I was like, yeah, I want to be like you. And, you know, Morgan, our CEO and founder, is this black woman. She's younger than I am. And I'm like, mentor me all the way because you are such a hustler, and I love it. And it's cool to be smart and, you know, hardworking. And it's a beautiful thing when you can build something from the ground up and say, as a team, we did this, and we pulled in our community, and together as not just an individual or 4 founders, like, we all did this together. It's just, just gives me goosebumps. I love it. I just
Yeah.
love it.
It's really cool. It's also interesting to hear you say you have that entrepreneurial spirit, and many people wouldn't consider this entrepreneurship, but you seem to really feel at home here. I know a lot of people probably have the sentiment I have. The more and more you get into the workforce, you're feeling like real freedom means working for yourself. But it seems you're happy working for this company. How does that mesh together?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very indicative of most of our audience. So most of our audience works in corporate America, but are, creating a side hustle from from 6 to 9 a.m. and they go to a 9 to 5. And I don't think that's any different than anybody else, feeling like I enjoy what I do, I love what I do, but this is my creative outlet that now I see could actually become something more than just a hobby. And people are realizing they have so many more resources at their fingertips that they're able to create something out of nothing. And I know how hard it is to get funded and to go through that whole process. Like I saw Morgan go through it a few times, and it's one of those things where you really have to be committed and you have to know why you're going after something. So for me, working at Blavity, I know why I'm here. I'm here because my parents' voices were silenced when I was young. I growing up being mixed and being too light for the Egyptians and too dark for the white people, like it was one of these things like how much of my identity do I talk about, And I remember this one story. We were going out, and I'll bring it full circle, but we were getting ready for school. We were going out to the car. I was about 7 or 8. I was super young. And I remember the car being parked like on the street. And my mom was leading the charge. And she gets up to the car and like she starts to cry. And I was like, well, that's odd. So I go around her and I look at the car and there's bologna all over it. Well, for those of you who don't know, bologna actually eats away at the paint on your car. And so I'm like totally confused at this point. So my dad comes out. He's cursing, they're having this conversation, and I realized that it was our neighbors that had put the bologna on our car because they didn't like the difference in the color of my parents' skin being together. And from that point on, I was so keenly aware of like the notes that were left on my parents' cars telling my dad to go back to the country he came from, my mom, he only married you for his green card. And so it was being privy to that kind of racism and hate so early on that I felt like I couldn't be me. Like I didn't know who I could be, like we grew up in such a Egyptian household, but at the same time I was told to like put my head down, fit in, but don't lose your cultural roots, but don't stand out too much either. And so being here, like I'm so incredibly passionate about it because I finally feel like the younger me has a voice, like people can talk about the things that are taboo and the things that are hard to hear, but we're able to tell it from our perspective. We're able to talk about the things that make other people uncomfortable in ways that we want to talk about it as a community. So that's why, and like I kind of prefaced early on in my speech, like that's why this is so incredibly important to me because I feel like finally I have a voice, my people have a voice, like our generation has a voice.
And with the current climate in the country, how do you think everyone should have that voice? And by means of that, respond to a lot of the negativity that's out there, especially towards Black people?
Yeah, that question comes up a lot, and there's a few different things that I think we have to be mindful of as a community. I don't think you have to perform or do anything different. I think living your best life, being who you are, unapologetically who you are, bless you, that really, that shows the rest of the world, the rest of the country. I'm okay with who I am and I can stand in my power and I'm okay with that. Now, some people show that differently, right? Like they'll create documentaries, they'll create music, art, and that's how our community comes together to really kind of showcase their creativity, to talk about the things that hurt us as a people. So yeah, I think it's just about being unapologetically who we are.
Really cool. And when you say who we are, that also gets complicated too, because as you mentioned,
course.
your story has mixed race issues
Right.
in it. And then some of us are from poor neighborhoods, rich neighborhoods.
Yeah.
How do you cover the black community, represent the black community, and not make us all one person?
Yeah. So we like to say that we don't just hit the Black millennial community. We're successful because we understand the different sub-demographics within that community. So Afrofuturists, Black nerds, which we even have like our own web series called Blurds. We focus on Black women who are in corporate America and who are entrepreneurs on the side. We are successful because we understand the different pieces of our community. So we realize that there are people in tech that are underrepresented, and so we just added a tech section to our site because we realized after Afrotech how hungry the community really was to have more information around that area.
Really cool. And so talk about specifically what you do, right? You mentioned earlier that a company comes and says they want to reach the black community. You help them do that. What if it's a company that's not right? As you said, some products shouldn't be being sold to the black community.
Right. Well, I think that, to back up, so what I do, when I first got there about a year ago, we really had to figure out as a company, how do we translate the value of who we are and the power of our audience to these brands that are used to working with the complex or an essence. And it was really about educating them that we are very different. Like, we actually don't have any direct competitors because there is nobody that does exactly what we do. So there are event planning companies that put on conferences. There are production houses that create video. But nobody does everything that we do, influencer marketing, video, editorials, right? So it's really about being able to look at who we are and looking at a brand. Now it's about looking at a brand and saying, okay, based on what our community needs and wants, because we're a technology company first. So we've been able to, as we've grown, scale based on technology and really collect data and insights about the different parts of our community. And so we're able to work with, so if a dating app comes to us again and says, we want to work with you guys, well, we can see what percentage of our community is single and if they over-index in working with, in using dating apps. For those, we've actually turned away certain brands, I'm not going to name any, but that don't have values that align with ours for those specific reasons, because we know that they just want the dollars associated with the influence of the black community as opposed to really having these genuine conversations. And I think you can pretty early get to the bottom of if they're in it for the money or for the realness of it. So yeah.
Cool. And so how do you guys respond to negativity, right? Because I'm in news. If I sent out a tweet saying an unarmed black man was shot, I'm yelled at by certain people for saying he was unarmed, though it's fact. So I'm sure you guys get backlash.
Absolutely.
How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, we're a media company, right? Our job is to create tons of content. So, and a lot of that, again, comes from our user base. So what our user base puts out there, it's not always going to be aligned with everybody's interests. So there's going to be conflict, but that's also what creates the conversation, right? That's what instigates those conversations that really need to be had. So it's not so much about, being chastised in the public for it. It's just more about we need to make sure that those conversations stay respectful and productive.
And talk a little bit more about what those conversations look like, because we appreciate your content. We read those articles when you talk about starting from the Mike Brown shooting. When something big and serious happens like that everyone's watching, what conversations do you guys have to decide what content goes out?
Well, we have an open platform, so anybody can basically upload content to be posted on the site. And often there are opposing views on the same topic. But again, it's about allowing those voices to be heard from different perspectives, and the hope is that everybody watching and listening can look and see that maybe it'll give me a different perspective on this thing that I didn't understand or I've only seen on CNN, or, I haven't seen it from the perspective of the Black community. So we allow that to happen so that we can kind of understand more about what's really important to the community.
And so what do you see for yourself and the company in, let's say, the next 5 years? Because you guys are still relatively new.
We are, yeah. Well, man, it's so hard to say. So, our strength as a company, our core competency is being able to identify these really cool ways for creators or giving them a platform to show their creativity. And so we look to do that just kind of on a wider scale. We started with articles and then moved into social media, doing video, and then now conferences. And I'm not sure if you guys heard yesterday, we just launched our women's lifestyle brand, 2190. Ladies, get on it. But yeah, it's about finding new avenues and new ways to access the communities and to have their voices be told.
And as you kind of mentioned, this Blavity doesn't really have competition. Does that make you excited? You guys are being so innovative, or do you feel like there should be other companies doing this?
No, I mean, I think one of the when I got into Blavity, it was like, this seems too good to be true. Like, really? Do we really not? But the truth is, as we meet with different brands and learn about what other brands have been doing, and what other companies have been doing, we realize, man, we have this blue ocean opportunity to create what we want because we have the trust of our audience, which our audience is actually 3 to 4 more times engaged than the average user online. So it's one of those things where, because we have the ear of the community, we're able to create whatever the community is looking for. So it really does give us this open opportunity.
And what do you think got people to stick with you guys and really trust you and get that level of engagement?
Yeah, I think it's again having those hard conversations that nobody else is willing to have, and having them in ways that are funny or eye-catching. We create really cool social media campaigns, funny videos, as you guys saw. So I think it's telling the stories in ways that keep the audience engaged and make them want to talk. So again, having conversations that people want to talk about, if you guys go online and take a look at where that Facebook video is housed for Black Twitter Day, you'll see just essays upon essays of people talking about their own experience, or, oh my God, that happened to me. And people want to talk to each other, especially in our community. So it keeps them engaged with one another, and it keeps them coming back to us for more content that is relevant to their lives.
Okay, great. Well, I want to open the floor to questions. I'm going to ask you one more so everybody can have time to think of theirs.
All right.
As far as people who are interested in doing this themselves, starting their own company, you see so many more people interested in having their voice and branding it. What's your advice as a branding expert?
It's really about the audience that you want to reach. I think you have to identify those user personas. So for us, our user persona is the engaged Black millennial who's always on social media and is also an entrepreneur. And so I think you have to find out who your audience is first, and then where to reach them. So is it on Instagram? Is it on Snapchat? Do they want to have longer conversations? So you go to Facebook. It's about learning who they are, how to access them, and then finding out what's really important to them and allowing them to tell you. A lot of companies, what they tend to do is say, oh, this is the next cool hot topic. We're going to push it from the top down and tell you what you should be paying attention to. But what we've found that really works in terms of creating a lasting brand is hearing what your audience wants to know about and then talking about that from your perspective, because they're obviously coming to you for a reason.
Yeah, and it obviously makes it feel more organic,
Exactly.
right? Because you're not forcing it down someone's
And authentic,
throat.
yeah.
All right, guys, what do you guys want to know from Lisa? We got about 20 minutes for questions.
Come on up.
I feel like the bag lady here with my bag. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome.
What's your name?
My name is Dr. Tammy Lewis Wilborn, and I am the owner of Wilborn Clinical Services here in New Orleans.
Great.
It's a mental health related service, and out of that is the Black Women's Wellness Conference that I've hosted and put on this year. one of the things that I want to ask you about is mentoring. You spoke about mentoring earlier. And one of the things I've experienced, I guess, in my own professional career, mostly as a professional counselor, is what I perceived as a generation gap in mentoring. And so I would receive mentoring from folks who were older than me, who I guess in my thoughts didn't respect my gangster and respect who I was as a person, and would sort of give me dated mentoring, I guess, advice. What would you say is helpful in terms of mentoring millennials as they try to figure out their own professional identities or their own paths or whatever it is that they want to do? What's helpful to know about mentoring millennials, I guess?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think you have to, the millennial age group spans from like 18 to 34. So you have to look at, are they on the younger end of the spectrum? Are they on the older end of the spectrum? And kind of figuring out, what's important to them personally. Because I truly believe if you're not passionate about what you're doing and what you're talking about, then they're not going to be engaged. They're just going to be in another job, right? Just how do I get ahead? And quite honestly, like that's been my experience in working with companies that I wasn't invested in. It wasn't until really Blavity that I'm like, oh, I get this mentorship thing now. Oh, I understand going hard in the paint or staying up until midnight because it makes a difference. I think you have to find what motivates them, first of all, and then speak to those things and give them opportunities to really engage on a level of take this project and run with it. I think millennials, what defines a big part of our generation is being able to have ownership and responsibility and saying, I can do this. So great, take it and run with it. And then you give them constructive criticism on the back end, or you help them kind of through the process, but you have to give them kind of allow them to go through it so that you can help them with specifics along the way instead of just, let's grab coffee and tell me about your life story and where you want to go. It has to be, where are you now? What's the next step you're trying to get to? Hey, Aziz.
Hi. I have a question regarding Muslim Americans and specifically Black Muslim Americans. I think one of the most powerful things that Blavity delivers is, like you were talking about, the ability to address taboos head on. Very savvy, sophisticated segmentation of the African American community around the U.S. So I guess for that particular segment, there seems to be a lot of complex issues that they're working through. So from what you've seen and what you gather, where do you feel like the pulse is with that audience? Where do they sit in terms of their connection to brands and their connection to things that everyone else wants?
Yeah, I can't speak specifically to them because I haven't seen as much content, but the truth is it's about being able to have content written and distributed through our platform. So our platform is a distribution platform. So if something is important to that community, it's open for them to use and to talk to other Muslim Americans or non-Muslim Americans. And it was kind of the same thing that I was saying earlier, where I think it's one of those things where you have to open your mind up to the new perspectives. And so when we do have something on that community, the readers who usually come to our site are much more open to, well, let me see if I understand this right. Like I've gone through something similar, maybe I can look at it from this perspective. And I think just kind of the general overall pulse of the community has been, since the election, when the election happened, you walk around and people were like with their heads down and looking at each other like, I can't believe, like just randomly on the street, right? But since then, you've seen things shift to excitement and one of hope and passion, and people are becoming more creative, more focused. They're more focused on activism now than they've ever been, and I think it would be the same with the Muslim community, as our voices are going to be heard, and we're going to find a way to put it out there. I hope that, yeah. Hey.
Hi,
Hi, step a little bit closer to the mic for us. There you go.
Yeah, this mic is being weird. Okay. I'm Shelly Bell, founder of Black Girl Vision. And I have a question about so Blavity is also like a little exclusive. So like how do you make like your essence, right? Like it's community oriented and it's like hip and it's like millennials, but then it's also in some ways kind of can be like hard to reach. How do you maintain like being community oriented and also being like holding your integrity as an exclusive space? Like we still have to make sure that we're reporting these things correctly, or make sure that we are maintaining a kind of like a step back but a step forward kind of situation where we connected, but we're also exclusive. Like, how do you
Talk to me a little more about the exclusivity. I'm not sure I understand that piece.
How community do you feel that like Essence Magazine is?
Do you mean appeal to the masses like other races?
No. I
You mean
mean
within
just
the Black
for
community?
being reachable. Like if what's happening in the Black community able to be a connector between like what we have to promote because we have to promote it, like what we have to report on because we have to report on it, because it's live, because it's popping, because these are the things we have to say. And then how do we also reach back and say, but wait a minute, in this small town over here in such and such, these little things are happening that people may be sending us, but we can't really say that right now because we got to focus on whatever the larger things are that they need to be reported, that need to be said, and what's important to the organization, I guess, in a sense. But community is important too, but like as a media outlet and as you grow, that touch with community becomes a weird space. So how do you like maintain like staying in touch with community and also whatever you need to do to grow?
So first we have our user-generated platform where almost half of our content actually comes from our community. That's not going to change. And like I said, that is the basis of who we are as a brand and as a company, which makes us very different than anybody else out on the market because we allow those voices to come in. And the truth is, whatever is hot and relevant, like that, you know, people will talk about it and it'll trend on Black Twitter and all that, but you know, it's also those things that are happening in those smaller communities have also taken off and become viral. So, for instance, there was this article that we wrote about, I believe it was Whole Foods, was sourcing food from prison work programs. And people were livid. They found out about it, and all of a sudden, like, people were saying, hey, actually, there is a farming community here in this small rural town, you guys should check it out. And people were, okay, great, there's one here too. Like all of a sudden it became this thing that spread across the nation because people were super passionate about it, because this idea of the prison system and the Black community was a bigger conversation that interested the community. Now what came out of it, the farming communities and where to get locally sourced food, that was something that just kind of happened, right? So it's more organic, and again, it's based on what the community finds interesting and impactful to them, and they'll let us know. Like, our community will let us know, especially if we put up something they don't like or that they're mad about, we'll hear about it. So it's, at least for our audience, it's super easy to stay connected because they're not shy about telling us what's important.
You know what, I want you to talk a little bit about millennials and passion. You kind of touched on it earlier, saying Blavity was the first job that you really felt connected to.
Yeah.
I find as millennials, we are very much, I'm not going to work unless I feel it, I connect with it, I do it, otherwise I'm quitting, I'm starting my own business. You, I understand, for a while we're going to do consulting, make your money, retire, and then do your passion, which I think I thought at one point too. What made you wake up and say, my entire life should be passionate?
Well, the economy crashed, first of all, and I lost my job. So that kind of just threw me into it. But yeah, like I like most people, and thank God, like I didn't have a house or a family that, you know, I had to start over from total scratch, but I had to start over from scratch. And I thought, look, I have a degree, but I have to start from the bottom. So if I'm gonna start from the bottom, I need to do something that I'm excited about and that makes me want to get up every morning, because this whole money thing is just not working for me. You know, like I did work in consulting where I was making a lot of money, and then I was just not happy. Like, I was working with automotive manufacturers, aerospace engineers, and the whole other piece that we probably don't have time to talk about is how are you a young millennial in these male-dominated industries with the good old boys club where you can't even get into, right? So that was a whole other issue. But I was like, you know what? If I'm gonna start from the bottom, I'm gonna start helping other girls and other women get to a point where if they can start this earlier than I did, then that's a win for me.
That's wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
Sir, I think you had a question. You didn't want to stand. You just
You
yell
didn't
it
want
to
to stand up and get to the mic.
I
What
was
happened?
going to ask it if I didn't have to walk to the microphone. Tell me what it is. Just say it
You know
loud,
we gotta
but repeat it for
call it
everyone.
out. Yeah, I mean, so did you guys hear that question? So he's saying that because we don't have anybody else in our space where we would look to as an archetype, in terms of strategy and best practices, how does that work? Well, we have, first of all, our executive team, they are the smartest 4 people I have ever met in my life, first of all. And they know that they are not the smartest people in the room because they have advisors and they have mentors who are in the media space. And so our investors, our advisory board, they are incredible at what they do. Like, we have people in the media space, so Macro Ventures, Charles King, I'm not sure if you guys have heard of him. If not, you should check him out. He's big in the industry. But he comes in and is like, look, we see what you guys are doing. Maybe if you tweak this a little bit, or we go to our advisors and say, look, this isn't working. Because one of the things that we do really well as a company is we pivot really fast. So if something isn't working, we'll test it. If it doesn't work, what's next? How do we do it different? And I think that's what's been able to make us super successful as a startup, because you guys know most startups don't make it past the first year. But because we're able to learn from those and change direction really quickly, I think it's one of those things that have helped us stay successful.
You touched on it. I think people would be interested to hear in your voice as a Black woman being in a space that is often male, or as I talked about earlier, right, being Black. Then there's Black woman, then there's Black man. I will bring up Tyrese's Instagram post, the singer. Did you guys see that the other day? Right, going off on women. Okay, so he posted a lace front wig on Instagram, and he went off on women for wearing weaves and wigs and fake lashes, and he is married, but he went on a long post, which seemed to be targeted at Black women. So often, as a Black woman, the people you're expecting to root for you aren't, right? So how do you capture your voice as a Black woman and not put it at odds with a Black man, but sometimes it's different?
Whew, that's a loaded question.
Right, I know. That Tyrese's Instagram post make me mad, though.
To my Black men out here. Man, I mean, I think, first of all, I think the larger conversation is about how do we as women come together and support one another in what we do and how we do it, because I think there's so often this competition of, just competition, right? And I think the space that we've created at Blavity has, especially with our new women's brand, it's about coming together and discovering life and being your best self together. Because when you do that, you feel empowered and you can stand in your power. So if somebody's telling you, oh, you wear a wig or you got a weave on, yeah, and you're talking to me right now because you think I'm beautiful. Like, that doesn't make me any less authentic as a woman, right? That I like to get my nails done, and if I didn't, you would have a problem with that too. So let's just be real about it. I mean, I think it's less about the other people and the other party and more about how we hold ourselves to our own standards as women. And especially now, I think the way that we're able to come together and talk about issues that matter and lift one another up, I think that's one of the most beautiful things about our women's conference that's coming up, that we just kind of come together and talk about real issues. And you know, how to make it in business, because it's not easy being out here, you know, trying to create businesses and get funding. I was just talking to a gentleman yesterday, and he was saying how there was somebody on this stage talking about, oh, it's so easy to get funding. Yeah, but you're a white male, you know, like you are not a black woman, 27, walking into a room of old white men that have these biases already about not just about who you are, but about your entire people, your entire culture, right? So I think it's about being able to be confident and knowing your value and what you bring to the table. And like Jessica Matthews said, those who see it will come. Like, don't go out and push for it. Like, you don't need that. You don't want that in your life anyway.
Yeah, that's very true. That is the perfect place to end. Please help me thank Lisa Atia for being with us today, guys.
Thank you.